This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.
We're not arguing about who's on first. We're arguing if they made it first.
and is the father a mutter? Yeah, the father's a mutter and the mother's a mutter.
Welcome, folks. Tom, JJ, and I are all back in the studio, reflecting on classic comedians, let alone the original troublemakers.
I wouldn't call them troublemakers. I'd call them like the best duo to do comedy from vaudeville, burlesque, then to jump into film, into radio, and then to television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no qualms about saying that, and I'm sure we'll delve into that much deeper than that in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Totally. Because there's something for everybody here, and we're also kind of just realizing that there's a reason they found their voice. Kind of is just, I don't know if I'd call it sheer audacity or just being ballsy in their respective day, but I mean, I would compare kind of if I had to contrast it with anything, I'd say they're very much like Jackie Gleason and Art Carney on The Honeymooners for me. Just the whole just back and forth, and then stop and sing.
I'd go back a little bit, because you got to think 2-man acts back then were always, let's just, the beginning begins with Laurel and Hardy,
Yep.
And those Hal Roach comedies they did, where Hardy is, Laurel is the naive, sweet one, and Laurel, and Hardy's the blowhard,
Yes.
and that's the dynamic. And with Abbott and Costello, it was Lou Costello was almost childlike, and Bud was almost like, I wouldn't say like nasty and aggressive. I'd say he would try to get Lou Costello flustered all the time. And that's the great thing when you have a team like that, when you got a straight man. And I'll say this, Bud Abbott was the greatest straight man of all time.
Yeah.
Because Lou and him could go back and forth. There's one scene they do when they're in a restaurant, and Bud is like asking him these questions, and he's like throwing these questions, and he goes, "This is gonna be a pip," he just knows he's gonna get in trouble. The more he answers, the more Bud Abbott's gonna just try to get him more flustered.
Yep.
And that's what made Abbott and Costello such a great team, is that Lou knew his spot, Bud knew his spot. They never flipped it around.
Mm-hmm.
And how they met was kind of
very odd.
Really, yeah. Lou had a act going with another guy, and the guy kept getting sick all the time. So he asked Bud Abbott one day to fill in, and both of their wives said, you should do an act together, because Bud Abbott was a good comedian, but he was a straight man. And the thing is about when you look at them, Bud Abbott is tall, good looking, and Lou's kind of schlubby, and don't get me wrong, I mean, the guy was a boxer,
Yes.
so, he kind of he kind of dresses kind of like the clothes really don't fit him that well. They're kind of big, and they're, he's doing the old circus, and he looks up the button, but it's that whole eye line thing, how to be a good double act. Martin and Lewis couldn't do it because they were both, Jerry could, that's something for another day. But to me, it's like you got the little kid and the adult. And the adult doesn't know as much as the little kid, but the adult thinks he's in charge, but he's not in charge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. They're definitely in that point where they're this one step away from you having to slap their hand away from the cookie jar.
Yeah.
But they're also, it's kind of meta before meta was a thing because they're very self-aware.
Yeah. And the way they would play scenes off each other, there's a scene in Buck Privates. If you guys ever seen it, where they're shooting dice.
I need to see that.
And Luke comes in and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" He says, I'm shooting. We're playing dice." He's like, "Oh, what kind of games do you play?" "Oh, I played, onesies, twosies, hopscotch, that kind of thing." So he's like, "Well, but Bud's explaining, well, you get a 5 and a 2, that's a 7. If you get a 3 and a 4, that's a 7. If you get a 4 and a 4, you lose, right?" So, are you old enough to play? He says, "Yeah, I'm old enough to play." He says, "Yeah, next week I'm going to start dating girls." So he starts playing dice. He's like, "Come on, daddy needs a new pair of shoes." And he goes, "Hey, how'd you know that?" I says, "I heard that from the guys in the club." "What club?" He says, "The club. They were playing this game with the sugar cubes." And the sugar cubes are putting, he's like, and he just keeps going, like, he says, "Come on, little Joe." He's like, "How do you know that?" So there are some points where Lou's playing Bud for the fool, and Bud is playing Lou for the, he kind of reverses it back onto
They
Bud.
exploit each other.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a camaraderie, like brothers who have been together forever.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I really got introduced to them when I was younger by my father, because my dad would have Channel 11 on WPIX. And PIX would play the Three Stooges in the morning, and then it would be Abbott and Costello in the afternoon. So we'd watch, like, trying to think, what the hell did we watch? Buck Privates Come Home, Time of Their Lives, Africa Screams. We got to see Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein,
Nice.
which is one of the best comedy horror movies of all time.
Yeah, The Invisible Man, I think, is kind of weak, but the other Universal ones definitely have a lot of love put into them, and it's a win-win. You're watching it both for the Universal monsters and for their shtick.
Well, the thing I love is when they meet. I mean, it's the first time you see the big three in the same movie.
Yeah,
you got, Dracula, Lugosi,
talk about wild.
Glenn Strange as the monster, and then, Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. And I love when he says, he says, he says, "When the moon is full, I turn into a wolf." And Lou Costello goes, "You and a million other guys."
I'm an Eva Maria.
And he says, "Are you telling me you saw that candle move across the coffin? You saw that candle? Yes, come on, step out." He slaps me. He's like, "Come on, you think Dracula's real? I saw that candle move." He's trying to, "Ah, come on, that's Poppy. Come on, that doesn't exist. Dracula doesn't exist." he's in the coffin, It was just, and you gotta realize that movie came after they had kind of a little bit of a low point.
Oh wow.
In their career, yeah, they weren't drawing as much. And then when they put them in the monster movies, it brought them back to prominence. But
Wild. I mean,
the
I can
great
see
thing
that.
about
I know some people
yeah,
who know him only for their cameos, which is wild because you would think any good parent would have introduced you to Stooges and all those other comedians, but what do I know?
yeah, and the thing is with that is that um Lou it was kind of sad because Lou had a very tragic life.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, and Bud did too. Bud was an epileptic, and he drank to help his seizures. And then Lou got, I think, rheumatic fever or something
Ugh.
like that, and he was out of he was in bed for 6 months. And the night he came back on the air, his son Lou Jr., who was nicknamed Butchie, was died in a drowning accident.
Dear.
And he was like, I think 2 years old. And there's something I found out they do the time of their lives. There's two movies they don't even work with each other. They're just like on like they're on. There's the whole time they're separate scenes. They didn't talk to each other for a while. The reason was that Lou Costello had fired a housekeeper and Bud hired her, and they got like there was kind of a rift. There was kind of a rift, and they didn't talk to each other for a while. So Lou Costello had raised some money to open a youth center, and Bud Abbott said, "Well, you know what? Why don't you just nickname it the Lou Costello Jr. Youth Center?" And Lou was like touched, and they patched things up. But they're the thing about it is like you read a lot about these comedy teams. They broke up in acrimony, like
Together
really bad
again,
circumstances.
away again. Yeah.
Like Martin and Lewis never spoke to each other. The story behind, I think the truth behind them breaking up was that they were just like, look, we're getting older. We can't do this anymore. Why don't we just stop here? And, they split up. They did their last movie, Dance with Me, Henry, which I saw, which was not that good.
Hmm.
And, they'd done Jack and the Beanstalk. They'd done Foreign Legion. They'd done, all that. They were let go by Universal. Dance with Me, Henry was kind of the last one, and that was it. But the great thing about it is you have all those movies to look back on, and that television show was unbelievable too.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's ever seen the television show,
I think I saw tidbits of it in like Best of Comedy, but I didn't see it get rebroadcast here too much. So.
how is like Lou Costello has one of the best things. How does 13 times 7 equals 28? And it's like it's a sketch that's so unknown, and like all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, wait, no, that does make sense. Yeah. It's like,
It's
so
just, they're the kings of the ambush, kind of.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's the thing. They'll get into a situation, and it was just funny to watch. Like there's one part in the Abbott Costello show, like they're trying to back out a car. So Lou and Bud decide to back out of the car. He says, "All right, I want you to back out." Okay, go ahead. You want me to go ahead? No, I want you to back out. All right, I'll back out. Okay, go ahead. No, you're telling me to go ahead, and I got to go backwards. All right? Yeah. All right, go ahead. Back out. Go ahead. And it starts to get. It's just the two. It's this two little thing. It's this two little. It's this two little. It's this little thing that just keep the thing with their comedies. It piles up and piles up and piles up. Like Who's on First is one of the greatest comedy sketches of all time.
Oh, no question.
Because he says, what kind of a name would this baseball team be about? Who's on first? What's on second? And I don't know who's on third. He's like, all right, who's on first? I'm asking you. And it keeps
Yeah.
piling and piling up and piling. That's the great thing about their comedy. It was like it would start out with one thing and then it just keeps piling up and piling up and piling up and then it comes to that point of like, and I don't give a damn, boom, and that's it.
Yes. Oh man. And like you say, to just go on and on and on and on. You're just like, where are we going?
You know who was? Do you know who was on that Abbott and Costello show, right?
Please tell me more.
Joe Besser.
Oh,
Wow.
He played Stinky, the overgrown, like the big overgrown. Oh, I'm gonna hit you.
I'm gonna harm you.
I'm gonna harm you. I'm gonna harm you. And he would make life a living hell for Lou Costello. Like, you know, he would. Oh, it was just. And Mr. Botchagaloop. You know, I mean, I don't know how they came up with this stuff. You know, but it
Well,
was.
it would have been great to have gone inside their brain. I would have totally taken a master class on comedy writing, as taught by Abbott and Costello.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Abbott and Costello, you could do. It's the premise of A and B. Okay, A says this to B says this to A goes back to B, and then he
Twisted up
confuses
a
them
bit.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's one of them, they're sitting in a restaurant, and he goes, suppose we walk to this restaurant. I told you to bore a hole in that wall. What would you do? I'm not going to bore a hole in that wall. Why aren't you going to bore a hole? Because I don't go in restaurants and bore holes in them. But why aren't you going to bore? He just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing him. And it's like this point where he's just got to, like, you know, he's like, it keeps going and growing and growing, and boom, it just, you know, it hits that.
It explodes in your face.
Yeah. That critical point, that point of critical mass. And then it goes all over the place, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that's a gift. It's definitely a gift because, they don't come off to me as idiotic in their skits. I know everyone else kind of would belittle themselves before we were doing kind of, you know, making fun of our overgrown bodies and everything. And they just kind of seemed like they were more just, you mouthing off at me, you know, wise guy, you know. That's how I describe the persona, at least. I don't know. How would you describe their personas?
Lou Costello. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
For me, Abbott and Costello is the perfect two-man duo because when you have a comedy duo, especially back in the day in vaudeville, burlesque, like that, you had one person who was the straight man. Perfect. You had someone who would feed the comedian. Abbott and Costello, to me, Costello was perfect in his role, but Bud Abbott he could teach a master class on how to be a perfect straight man.
They're even kind of doing part of the actor curriculum. Where am I in the scene, and how's this going to end? Am I going to tiptoe out of here, or am I going to be the butt of your joke and we cut there?
Yeah, and to me, it takes talent to be funny, but it takes talent above and beyond that.
Do all this wordplay.
To be the straight man, just do the setups.
And it's always like on a misunderstanding or a stupid trait that many of us have fallen victim to.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that you have to be a great straight man. You not only have to be attuned to your partner and know where your spots are, know where the jokes are going to land, but you also have to. You literally have to not to go against your natural nature. You want to laugh, you have to laugh, but you can't, because that breaks the illusion.
Yeah.
Now, and that to me is something that makes that team so brilliant. Lou Costello, I saw him in the 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock, and
oh wow,
yeah, and I will tell you that he was good, but I could still tell there was something missing. I think he had one too many straight men. He was trying to, and there was nothing really to play off of. Whereas
only as
with
good as the
Abbott,
skit.
yeah, with Abbott though, he always had that dynamic where Abbott was always the more mature, always the more sensible. A great way to look at it is Bud Abbott was the left side brain, logical. Things had to fall in sequence. Costello was the right side of the brain, more creative, more able to adapt to different things. And that, in a nutshell, is what made them work so well. It also, I go back to some of the other comedy teams that we mentioned, like Martin and Lewis.
There you go.
George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Yeah.
That was another one that was another duo that really kind of that had that spark but didn't take it quite far enough. But and then you go look at other teams. We mentioned Martin
Going
and Lewis.
really into the vault there, early 50s.
No kidding. And you also look at a team like Hope and Crosby.
Yeah, that's one
that kind of worked on the same dynamic, but also put a little bit of a twist on it because both Hope and Crosby could be funny. So it wasn't a strict straight man comedy guy. It was two guys who could do both and just play off of each other.
Totally.
Going back to Abbott, back to Abbott and Costello, they are the masters of it. I will. This is a hill I will die on.
I can't blame you.
And the thing that gets me is you mentioned the 30th Bride of Candy Rock. That's the last one that Lou made as an actor in a film. He was also on a Western.
Oh wow.
That he did. I forgot what it was. I keep thinking it was Shotgun Slate or something like that. I don't know, but his daughter Chris wrote a beautiful book about her father, and she said that when he did that show, the first one to call him up and congratulate him was Bud Abbott. So there wasn't any bad feelings between them. Supposedly the deal that they got broke up was Errol Flynn invited them to his house one night. And he wrote a book called My Wicked, Wicked Ways. And he says he broke up Abbott and Costello because what happened was he was going to show a film when it turned out to be was hardcore pornography. So supposedly the two of them bickered and argued about who did what to whom. This is according to Errol Flynn. But what Chris Costello said was, that was all BS. They just said, look, we've had a good run. Why don't we just stop here? We've been together for almost 20 some odd years. Stop now and, we'll take it from there. And a lot of people don't realize after Lou Costello died, there was a cartoon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I keep thinking Bud Abbott and Stu Irwin imitating Lou. And it was on for like a season or 2 seasons. And you could tell Bud Bud might have had a stroke or something like that because he wasn't as quick as he used to be. I kept telling people, there was a Three Stooges cartoon and there was an Abbott and Costello cartoon. People go, no, there was. Yeah, there was. I saw it. It was on Channel 5 when I was a kid. And the thing is that if you ever watched the movie Bud and Lou with Buddy Hackett and Harvey Korman, with the infamous, I've had a lot of strawberry malters in my time, but this is the best strawberry malted I ever had, and he dies in the bed. That was all just pure BS. It paints Lou Costello like he was a petty man, which he wasn't. He was a very kind and loving man.
Yeah, I never heard anything unlike W.C. Fields or Bob Hope.
Yeah, he was a very kind, loving, and giving man. I mean, the death of his son affected him, um, in a way. But
How could it not?
no, I mean, but I'm saying,
I
you
know.
know, anybody who loses a child, it's kind of a thing that affects you. So, but Krista's book was so good to read, and it painted them in a better light than most people think they were painted in. Um,
Yep.
I can't really. I gotta say, like, if they ever do anything, I know they never got an Oscar. I know they never, which is a shame because they should have gotten one, or they should have given one to the family. They are they're the gold standard that most teams are two-man teams are based on. I mean, you got Laurel and Hardy, but Laurel and Hardy was different. Laurel and Hardy was mostly films and shorts.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get into television. Television with Lou Costello and Bud Abbott, Abbott and Costello, only gave them more exposure. And you have to think too. I'm trying to think with Laurel and with Bud, with Bud and Lou. It was kind of like they're always going to be there. Their movies are still there.
Yep.
I don't know how many shorts are around of Laurel and Hardy.
Dozens. Yeah.
Dozens, yeah. But the one thing, and then they kind of faded out, and then Martin and Lewis took over. But the thing with Martin and Lewis was that, it's Dean Martin. He's a singer. He's the good-looking one. Jerry's the crazy one.
Yeah.
And to me, sometimes I think that pattern with their movies kind of wore out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small-town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast wrecks and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
I think, there's a couple of good movies, but towards the, it wasn't like that with Abbott and Costello, in my opinion. I think Abbott and Costello did great jobs on their movies, and the writing was good. And they were, they were always on top. Even if they had a shitty script, they'd always make it work,
Yeah, I'd say so. But if you were to even just recommend anyone, like, check out some of their material, I think, where would you want to even start? Because
to me, it would be Buck Privates.
All right.
Buck Privates, Up in the Air, and I think the Navy one. Those are the best ones. And then, they did A Night in the Tropics. That's I think the debut they had. I think A Night in the Tropics, where they were just the comedy team. They've got, I think Carmen Miranda's in it or something like that, and they're just the comedy team. And they saw, Universal saw how funny they were, So you gotta start. I think you start at the beginning. I think you should end at Meet the Invisible Man, or I think Meet the Mummy or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think where it end at, because it's there's no way you can end. I'm trying to put this right. Like, the movies are just so damn good. Some of them hit or miss, but a lot of them, you start at Buck Privates, in my opinion. That's the movie you start at. Because just some of the stuff they do in there is just hilarious.
No, totally.
And I said, the dice game is one of the best things they ever did.
Absolutely. And I don't think they're as strong as, say, the Marx Brothers, but I do think, like you guys say, this is more of they're still kind of remarkable in a Cagney way, dare I say, because the way they're staged and they're letting their energy be infectious and react off each other while assigning each other a position. You close the scene or you start the problem or the argument is still kind of a must see from a acting appreciation.
And for me, the thing about the Three Stooges is that pretty much whatever combination of the three you want to use, they all had comedic potential. They all could work off each other. Even Mo, who was traditionally the straight man, he had his funny moments. So they took that dynamic and twisted it and turned it into what became Three Stooges comedy, which is not a fault on them by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
but what happened was that you had the Burns and Allen, you had your Abbott and Costello. Everybody brought a little something different to the table. When you start breaking off and start to with the Marx Brothers, every one of them was funny in their own way. Harpo was just hysterical. Groucho with the slick lines, and everybody in that ensemble were truly comedic geniuses in their own right. But it doesn't quite match up with what Abbott and Costello bring to the table, which is the perfect combination of a straight man and a comedian. You have that melding. You have. I mean, I can't really think of anybody better.
That's beautifully stated, dude. Because I see so many who don't seem to know what that phrase is, and it's like, yeah, you're the normal guy in the scene.
Exactly. Well, even I'm sorry to interrupt. Even some of the more recent duos, like I watched a comedy special with Steve Martin and Martin Short. They did similar to what the Three Stooges did, or they did their own little take on it. And the Marx Brothers, they were both funny. They also played off each other as straight men, but it wasn't quite the same dynamic. They were both comedians. They both work well together, but it was lacking a single straight man. It's like you knew they were going to play straight men to one another at some point, but you also knew that you were going to see them break out of that role and do something else and be like that comedian.
It's like how every actor wants to be a villain. It's just more fun to be freed up and not have to play by any rules, but at the same time, it affects how people perceive you on set versus on screen versus in the media. But I think we can all applaud anyone who takes a risk, but I think we can also appreciate these guys for just. I mean, I don't know anyone who just flat out just hates them or acts like they weren't one of the comedy greats. I think they're all kind of ingrained in somebody's comedic blood, even if you've only seen a few of their skits or TV specials.
Even if the only thing you've seen of them is Who's on First.
Yeah, or just the universal crossovers. Yeah, I mean,
exactly. If all you know of Abbott and Costello is Who's on First, that in and of itself is a microcosm of what they did combination
Yeah.
of wordplay, combination of just comedic timing and straight man versus funny man dynamic, and it you can follow it, even though it's so confusing. And you say, who's on first? What's on second? Who's on third? and just the little things like that. Even today, I will be walking around and with my wife will say something like, I don't know, and then we'll both shout out, third base.
Yeah. Well, and there's something else too. I mean, like, I can remember watching Laugh-In as a kid when they were rerunning it on Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, and Rowan and Martin. Okay, they were a good comedy team. I always look at Peter Cook and Dudley Moore as kind of the spiritual like sons of Abbott and Costello, because there are the Pete and Dud sketches where it was the two of them playing these two guys that were going, yeah, it was in last night. Yeah, I was going to sleep. Yeah, and I thought something funny. Funny. He's like, what was it, Dad? He says, oh, I was thinking funny. Yeah. What was it, Dad? He's like, it was the way it was Peter Cook was a great straight man who could make Dudley Moore crack up just by saying something. And Dudley Moore could be like that, that one little thing when they would do stuff like that together. Burns and Allen the same way. Burns would like just hurl something off, and Gracie would just start building on it. Yes. Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, I don't know. It's like
depends on how they're situated or framed.
Yeah, I mean, like there's the.
I mean,
Go ahead,
you got a battle of egos there. So.
Yeah, I link up Martin and Lewis more to Hope and Crosby than Abbott and Costello, because you got the singer, you got the boo 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 boo, and the
boy,
hey, man, this is really wild, man, this is wild. but they both had their talents, they both had timing, they both were geniuses in their craft, but they weren't strictly straight man comedian. No. They were slight comedian versus more comedian. And never the twain shall meet.
And if your twain never meets, I'd go see a doctor.
If your twain lasts for more than 4 hours, please consult your doctor.
Did you guys ever watch the SNL show with Nathan Lane, where he played Officer Lou Costello?
I don't think I've seen that skit, but I love Nathan.
He comes on Weekend Update because I remember, like, back in the 90s, they found like a mummified corpse in some guy's apartment, and he says, and Norm Macdonald, God bless him, goes like, well, we have a police officer here, Mr. Officer Lou Costello, and Nathan Lane comes out, and I swear I was watching him. He became Lou Costello. Says, my partner Chick and I went into the where'd you go? We went to the apartment and we saw the mom. What'd you see in there? He starts hitting him. He looks at him and says, butt hit a little less harder than you do.
Oh, damn.
And, it's just, we saw them. I saw them. What, you saw the money?
And this triggered a memory. I don't know whether it's exactly true, but I can swear that Phil Hartman actually played Bud Abbott in a sketch on SNL.
Let's look it up.
I could be completely off on that, but it seems to be there.
Okay.
Well, here's something funny. There was an actor named Ron Masick. If you know him, you'd see him. He was in Laser Blast. He played the sheriff.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That far back. Damn.
He did a commercial as Lou Costello with a guy playing Bud Abbott, and he was phenomenal. Because he did the whole thing, and I had to do Luke. He did Lou Costello's voice down pat. It's like with Chuck McCann and some other guy. They used to do Laurel and Hardy for Delco windshield wipers. If anybody remembers those commercials.
Oh wow.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Stanley, what'd you do? Well, you tell me only to get the windshield wiper. And they would do that. He said, "I told you to get Delco wipers." But the great thing was that, there's, to see that, and then to see, if they had done a movie about Abbott and Costello again, I would have seen Nathan Lane play Lou Costello, because he looks like him so much.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, man, he would have made a great Lou. Just the way he would have played him. And when he does that skit with Norm Macdonald, I was on my mother and me, and I think my mother and me were up late one night, and I think I was under the influence of something, and he came on and he was doing Lou Costello, and he's doing the whole, I walked into the closet, and he's like, and I saw them, and I'm laughing, and it's like it's like everybody's falling on, like the sketch is kind of bombing, but if you're an Abbott and Costello fan, he's imitating Lou Costello. He's got like the cap on sideways a little bit,
The way his bearding is, you can kind of tell it. Yeah.
He's doing the whole bit, and I'm laughing, and I'm trying hard not to just lose it. And my mother's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Mom, you got to watch this." And she's watching, and she starts laughing because she knows, it was in our family. My father had a great book, the films of Abbott and Costello. I think I still have it somewhere.
I might have read that actually years ago at a library. I think.
Yeah, it had the movies of Bud and Lou, and it had it has the 35th Bride of Candy Rock in there too. Was that a horror movie?
Might have been. What's his name again?
The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock, and somebody was in that playing the straight man. Hold on.
American
there were
comedy.
a couple. I know there was a military. There was a military guy that.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi movie. Apparently.
Yeah,
making fun of the 50-foot woman type.
I'm trying to remember what it looked like, or what it was like. But I just remember that movie not really getting good reviews, or
and deservedly so.
Yeah, and I think it was. Why don't you think it was either Richard Deacon was in that movie? I don't know. Somebody was playing like
Sergeant is Larry Kent, and I just see Costello credited for this one, and Gail Gordon as Rossiter.
Gail Gordon, that's who it was. Gail Gordon is straight man. Well, Mrs. Carmichael.
Multiple roles on Lucille Ball's various sitcoms. Wow.
Well known to be Mr. Mooney on Here's Lucy. Well, the Lucy. Yeah, no. He was supposed to play Fred Mertz.
Oh damn!
And he couldn't get.
I did not know that.
He couldn't get out of it. So they hired Bill Frawley. But the great thing I love about Gail Gordon is he played Mr. Wilson after the other Mr. Wilson died.
Jeez. Man.
He was Mr. Wilson's brother. Wow. I think it was after the second or third season, Dennis the Menace, the guy died in real life. And, they had to do the friendly, he's out of town bit. And they had they're like, "Oh, what happened? Oh, he's out of town visiting his sister, but here's his brother and and the thing I love about Gail Gordon and that Mr. Wilson role is he's a little bit more understanding of Dennis.
What was the matter? What happened? Was Dick Sargent busy?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, this has been fun, guys, because we're kind of just honoring our comedy icons, but we're also just loving how they've lasted for the decades in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, there's some Looney Tunes cartoons, but I don't really remember those as much as send-ups they did of, say, W.C. Fields or Dragnet. Or
Well, they did. Warner Brothers did 3 shorts with 2 cats that were like Abbott and Costello.
yeah.
Yes.
Those are the ones
Hey,
that they hit. And
I don't even remember him doing that in real life.
yeah, it's kind of like it kind of goes back to like who are you doing an impression of Sean Connery, or are you doing Sean Connery on SNL? It's something called the Shatnerisms. It's just like it's gonna happen. Is however you sound to one person, however popular the spoof is, kind of.
It's depending upon whether I'm stooping Trebek's wife.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Boo.
Yep.
Boo your mother, Trebek. I'm banging her in the behind.
Oh man.
There's a reason why. Yeah, there's a reason why comedians like Andrew Dice Clay and Dane Cook will be forgotten, but Abbott and Costello will be forever.
Oh yeah.
It's that.
Don't get me started on today's comedians who are complaining, I'm gonna get canceled. I'm like, or maybe you're just not clever. What have you done besides bitch?
The thing I always said about Abbott Costello is it's that material that you can go back and watch over and over and over again.
It's very timeless.
Even Seinfeld is
he's a big fan.
Was a big fan, and you can tell in some of those shows, there is that thing where they build on the situation as it goes along. Three's Company was like that too, I think, in some points. The great thing, and that's the thing, you always look back and you see Bud and Lou, Abbott and Costello is like these icons of like just shoot, just trying to, they're like it's like the point where you're watching it, you're going, okay, where's this going to end? Like when he does the whole sketch about, go forward, go back. Okay, go ahead. Back out. Go ahead. Go ahead. That whole thing is like, it's how sometimes it's like how Monty Python would work, or
and but I'll take it a step further. They actually, Mystery Science Theater 3000 actually did an homage to Abbott and Costello and
sure.
that go forward, back that in the Giant Heel Monster.
Oh yes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I've been meaning to rewatch that one. It's been a minute. Now I have a reason.
Yeah, exactly. You will, if you remember the scene where they're trying to get the vehicle out or something like that. They have the French lady who is driving. Do you want me to go forward? Different things like that. That's exactly the Abbott and Costello bit, just thrown in with a little bit of a French accent.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to go forward? No. Go back out. Go forward.
Back
go
and
ahead.
forth. And
Want
literally the
left?
segment
Right.
is literally going back and forth. It's great. I miss that level of camaraderie and comedy.
Yeah.
There's something I always said I miss my father a lot. But I said the one thing I miss about is how he would always introduce me to comedians that he loved. And Abbott and Costello were 2 of them that he loved.
He brought you inside his world.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there were 3 or 4 things that he loved comic wise. He loved the Marx Brothers.
Lovely.
He loved the Three Stooges. He loved Abbott and Costello, and he loved Jack Benny.
Mm.
And my father, he tolerated Bob Hope, because Bob Hope was kind of a letdown for him, because Bob Hope was the same fucking thing all the time, looking lecherous, and he loved watching the road movies with him and Crosby.
Yes.
And I love the one Alias Jesse James. My father and me one time were sitting there and we were watching Alias Jesse James at the end where there's the gunfight and all the Western stars show up. Like they've got Bat Masterson and Gary Cooper shows up and Tonto shows up. They're all helping him shoot out in the end. And my father was laughing, and then like the last part, it's Bing Crosby shoots somebody because he says to the camera, says, "Yep, this guy's going to need all the help he can get."
That's why I'll teach him son Gary. Boom, 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 boom.
Gary, you're a little bit overweight. I'm going to hit you aside the hill with a big brown belt. Now let's see if the boys in band. The one thing that gets me though, like you never hear anything bad about those two in their private life. I mean, like nothing where they were like,
yeah.
That's the one thing I love about
other than vices, but nothing to the point where
they were prolific gamblers, but they
many were.
But back then who wasn't,
Yeah.
But I just gotta say, I mean, if you want, you go back what you said about people being canceled today in this day and age, it's like comedy back then. If you look at, there's no swearing. There's no,
trying to upstage the other and see how
trying to upstage
much
the
you
other.
can get away with.
I mean, there is some like sexual entendre, but it's not like dirty. It's like fun, like there's one where she's like, this woman comes out, she's like, I can't move my car, and I might be late. I can't miss my date at the beauty parlor. I think Bud Abbott looks at her and goes, "Yeah, you sure can't."
Yeah, risque is as far as they would go.
Yeah.
And that even
I think the
was
80s ruined it a bit, but I think by the 2000s, I think we're now in the investor stage where whoever is big in whatever country, that has come back and kind of ruined a lot of productions that might have otherwise turned out okay.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think also just, again, comedians are, worried about, now that they have so much more to experiment with, there's also kind of a lot of oversaturation. So instead of being worried, did I kill it at a comedy club? They're now, well, I might suck, but did I peak on, TikTok that day?
Yeah, looking for the wrong audience.
Algorithms. It's like, yeah, they watched you. That doesn't mean they liked you.
Yeah, I see people who try to be funny on TikTok, and I'm like, you don't have it. I've even tried to do a funny video, and I look back and I'm like, nah, it doesn't
Just
work.
stick to making memes because anyone can make them. But I mean, also just know your limit. Like,
yeah, know what you can do. That's the big key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Abbott and Costello knew what their roles were. They knew how to do them exceptionally well, and that made them the team, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
Yeah, and Tom, I can't help but agree with you. They are probably the golden standard to which any comedy team, I see Martin and Lewis, to a point, but towards the end it got to be kind of the same damn story over and over again. Laurel and Hardy, but they kind of puttered out.
Stooges, we like them, but at the same time, then once Curly leaves, then it's a whole different story. So
once Shemp and Curly are gone, gets to be different altogether. The Marx Brothers, great up until honestly A Day at the Races, and then it goes downhill from there.
And I can't really think of a time when Abbott and Costello dipped at all. They
or it
just
looked like they didn't want to be there,
yeah, they
Because we mentioned a few we were disappointed by, but hardly anything that would make the bottom 100,
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a point where you watch some of their stuff and it's like, okay, we've been given the script, let's do the best we can do with it, and they do the best they can do with it, and it even sometimes is better than what they have put in front of them,
Exactly.
And then there are some points where you're given a script, like let's say Love Happy by the Marx Brothers, which was supposed to be a solo thing for Harpo, and that falls apart, because Groucho didn't want to do it, and Chico just did it. Chico did it for the money, and Chico did it for the money. I mean, granted, Night in Casablanca to me is the last great movie they did together, but
Yep.
The Three Stooges, even with Curly Joe, the Rita, they were kind of like pushing. Pushing and trying to get, and it's a point where you're just like, we can't do this anymore,
That's pretty much it. It's been a delight, guys, because when we talk about these guys, we're also just reminding everybody they came, they saw, and they did.
He was a bad little boy.
He was a stinker. You can find us on the interwebs talking about all other kinds of deep dives into other chapters of TV programming, retro movies, and
more
movies.
stuff.
No propaganda here, but
but you don't want to shake it too hard.
shake it real good.
I mean, what do you mean don't shake it too hard? What's going to happen? Dracula's going to fall out? I'm telling you.
And all jittery with...
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a jacked up